Hello everybody, and welcome back once again to yet another addition to my journey through One Piece. This is a big special one, or the arc is rather short, but this means a lot to me because this is the last review before Wano, which is a gigantic arc for me personally for a bunch of reasons. Maybe I'll talk about them towards the end. If not, I'll talk about them in the next video. But secondly, the Reverie is a game changer for One Piece. It is not only a phenomenal arc, it is not only super engaging in a bunch of ways, and not only does it do a bunch of things that are so characteristic of the identity of One Piece, but it is just pure greatness, and I just had the best time reading through these chapters, and I love it. I love the arc. It's amazing. We'll be getting into the nitty-gritty of it in a second, but if you'd like to follow my journey throughout the entire series, we're going to be deep into Wano, or deep-ish into Wano by the time this video comes out, especially on YouTube. We're going to be quite a ways in. But if you want to follow, you can join me on Twitch. You can follow me on Twitch. The link is in the description and pinned comment, where I read every single chapter of One Piece live. We've been doing it for 20 months, 21 months, something like that, and we'll be continuing into Wano. The arc that was releasing when I first started reading. So you can join me on Twitch if you'd like. You can go on Patreon if you want early access to the first review of Wano. So it'll be for the first act or the first part or whatever it'll be. You can check that out right now if you want to check out early access on Patreon for the $5 tier. Do it after this video though, because we got a lot to talk about. You can also follow me on Twitter or X if you want updates or my thoughts on One Piece or any other series I'm into. You can join the Discord for the community, a great community out there, talking about my streams, but even outside of the streams as well. Tons of awesome stuff on there, tons of great people. And yeah, that's about all I got for the housekeeping. One more thing actually is, the AJPiece comments will, of course, follow in just a minute, but I will be recording them in a separate recording, so those will come right here. So the AJPiece comments for this video, just so you guys know, these are a little bit weirder, because my recording process for Whole Cake Island going into the Reverie has been a bit weird and fragmented, so for that reason, the only ones selected from the Zoe video for this one were ones from patrons who had early access, because the Zoe video is not currently up on YouTube just yet. So we just have a couple this week, but both are very good. The first one is from Just My Opinion, who asks, I know you love One Piece, but my question is this. What do you think can raise it even that little bit higher, that extra level, if anything at all can? It's a good question, and it's not really one that I know exactly how to answer. I sort of think of this as a I'll know it when I see it sort of thing. Like, for the first time I watched Hunter x Hunter, I'm like, this is great, this is awesome, this is probably one of my favorite anime at this time. This is just like a year or so after I started watching or something, so it didn't really mean much, but yeah, I really enjoyed it, I thought it was great, and then I hit Chimera Ant, and then it became one of my favorite stories of all time. I didn't know that I wanted that from Chimera Ant, but once it hit, and I just knew it. So I don't really know. Obviously, I don't think One Piece is perfect. I've shared some of my problems with it. A lot of them having to do with pacing and some poor prioritization in little moments here and there, and the bloated element of certain arcs, especially Dressrosa at the beginning. But those aren't very major, and those don't stop me from loving the series. And they're so key to the identity of One Piece that I wouldn't say that eliminating them would make me love the series more. At least not significantly more. So it's interesting. It really does feel to me like it's I'll know it when I see it sort of thing. I'll take it as it goes. I will say that Emu, like I will talk about in this video, has opened up a whole new avenue of thematic possibilities and ground that the story could cover, and the complexion of the story and theorizing, and Emu may be that shift to bring One Piece up that little bit higher. We'll talk about it later in this video, but it's very interesting that this comment comes through right after I see Emu, and right after I feel like that could completely evolve my love for the series. So yeah, sorry for the non-answer, but hopefully that gives a little bit of insight, and maybe you guys can relate to that, not sure. I don't really tend to be able to pinpoint what will make me love this more, or what will give this a leg up from what it is already. Writers know that much better than me, and writers tend to do that, and when it happens, I just let it wash over me and fall deeper in love. And the second and last for today is From Simon Uzumaki. Here's a fun one that you'd usually see in your Twitch streams, but might as well give it a go here. Since you alluded to Zunisha in this way in your Zoe review here, what are your top 5 pieces of One Piece imagery throughout the whole series? Could be spreads, locations, panels, character designs, whatever. That is an awesome question, and to let you know what they're referring to in case you don't watch the Twitch streams, I have a command or a redeem on my Twitch streams where if someone uses a certain amount of channel points, I give them a top 5 of anything they request. So they could say top 5 foods, top 5 Hunter x Hunter characters, top 5 favorite video game settings, top 5 favorite fictional fights, stuff like that. So this is in reference to that. But the top 5 pieces of One Piece imagery is a phenomenal question. It's a phenomenal top 5, and I love it. And I love that it's so diverse. It doesn't have to be a location or a scene or a moment. It could just be general imagery. And so this is completely unranked, but Zunisha, Zoe, the island of Zoe in general, the concept of it is one of them, for sure. I talked about it in my Zoe video, is one of the most beautiful, complex, captivating, rich pieces of imagery that Oda has brought to us throughout the entire story, 900 plus chapters, and the lore and the mythos and what it adds to the setting and the self-contained lore of Zoe itself and the mysteries and why it's walking, all that. That's one of them for sure. Again, not number one, but it's one of them. Next would be the imagery of Luffy ringing the bell, and I'm kind of cheating because this is kind of 2 moments, but they coalesce. The imagery of Luffy ringing the bell and then his silhouette plastered across the horizon for by Jaya, for Mont Blanc cricket to see. The longer I have sat with One Piece, that has been one of the most enduring images and one of the most representative of Oda's spirit, of the spirit of this story, of Oda's themes, of what he's trying to communicate with One Piece. Skypiea remains phenomenal. It's aged so well, and that image is the most stark and beautiful element of it for me. This celebration of dreams and freedom. So that's 2. Number 3, the third one I would say would be Whitebeard's final stand. Not a single coward's wound, the sun piercing, refracting off of his standing corpse, having defended all that he came to defend, having withstood everything, his face torn off, all these wounds through his chest and stomach, and embracing the one who betrayed him, and just being the symbol he needed to be. That image of Whitebeard at the end of Marineford, that spread of the light piercing through and him just standing tall, is one of the most enduring images in One Piece and one of my favorite images in shonen and fiction, period. So that's an easy number 3. Number 4, it's a tough one to narrow these down, and I might be forgetting some, and don't think of this list as exclusive, because I don't know, in 5 minutes I could totally remember a new one or think about something different, and then this one could be number 5, so don't think of this as super strict. I'll name a couple extra ones towards the end as well. But that spread at the end of Alabasta, the Straw Hats with the symbol on their wrists, on their arms, showing to Vivi that they will forever be together in spirit. They will forever be a crew, that she is forever a member of the Straw Hats. That is one of the most beautiful things in One Piece to me, and it's one of the most impactful. And I think the last one I want to mention here as part of the 5 would be something that is representative of Bink Sake, which, over time, I've been talking about this in my streams a lot, but I've come to realize that Bink Sake means more to me, just a little bit more to me than any other backstory in the entire One Piece story so far. There are so many phenomenal ones. Sanji's, Luffy's, Chopper's, Robin's, the Skypiea one with Noland and Kalgara, Fisher Tiger. They're all phenomenal, but Bink Sake is my favorite. Bink Sake is my number 1. It hits me emotionally like nothing else, and maybe that's due to the anime and the rendition of the song, but regardless, the spread of Brook playing on his piano and Luffy just kind of draped over it, I think he's front-facing, but he's draped over it and he goes, "Want to join my crew?" That one just means a lot to me. I think I have to include that because of what Bink Sake means to me. But there are also tons of other moments and images. For example, the scene of For example, the scene in Jaya, where the whole bar laughs at Luffy, Nami, and Zoro. That's one of my favorite in One Piece, full stop. That could be in there instead of maybe the Alabasta one. There's also in Skypiea, the party, right? There's also all the Straw Hats lined up there for Robin in Eni's lobby. Another one could be Luffy and Jinbei with the blood transplant. Beautiful, one of the best images in One Piece. Another could be Luffy versus Doflamingo, and Doflamingo being forced to look up at him. That is one of the most ingenious things. So there's tons. I could name dozens, but those are the 5 that came to mind the most, and those are some honorable mentions, I guess, but it's not exclusive. Anyway, fantastic questions. Thank you so much for sending them in. If you'd like your question to be read for AJPiece in a future video, just be sure to use the hashtag AJPiece, and it'll be entered into a pool where I'll read it aloud. And I promise next time I won't have to do these Patreon exclusive early access ones, but for this one it had to happen. Sorry about that. Okay, AJPiece comments done. Let's talk about the Reverie. This arc is phenomenal. I understand a lot of people that kind of count it as a sort of continuation of Whole Cake Island, sort of like a post-Eni's Lobby sort of thing. I guess I get that, but it's too... It feels too much of its own thing. And I get the idea that it doesn't feel as much of an arc because it doesn't really have a self-contained story. It's kind of a bunch of building blocks being set up and a bunch of hype building and checking in with a bunch of players throughout the world and lore piece and world building piece and all that. It isn't really a self-contained, comprehensive story, which a lot of people like in their arcs, and I do as well, but nonetheless, this feels like its own thing. I couldn't in good conscience continue it, or add it on to the end of Whole Cake Island, because that video was huge already, but also because it just felt like it merited its own video. If Logtown got its own video and was worthy of several talking points, as it was, this one absolutely is, because this is essentially, you guys know me, I love when One Piece goes, or when Oda goes, lore piece, world building piece, check in with the characters we haven't seen in 200 chapters piece, or more than 200 chapters. I love that. That is my thing. I love that just as much as the grand, sprawling, epic arcs that have to do with freedom and dreams and camaraderie and connections and family. I love these just as much. I have since Logtown. And I feel like as the series goes on, more and more characters get introduced, and they get steeped in this history and this mythos, and they become legends in and of themselves. The longer they stay in the story, the longer the story goes, the more the plot builds upon itself, the more the world expands. You know, as I've learned about Skypiea and Jaya and Water 7 and Eni's Lobby and Alabasta and Dressrosa and Fishman Island, these characters have gradually accumulated, and my idea of the world is accumulated. And you know, in Impel Down, when I was just thrilled that Sir Crocodile and Buggy were together in the same arc, you can just take that, but apply it to so many different characters, now that we've seen so much of this. So this lore piece element, the thrill I get in seeing these characters interact and see the story hint at stuff down the line, and see this payoff as much as it lays foundations for things that are so cool, and the way it transitions, I think that just gets better as the series goes on. Of course, it's written well, but just as a byproduct of Oda building upon this for so many years. You know, we have Shida Hoshi and Rebecca and Vivi talking together, which we'll get into, one of the most adorable things in the world, but it's just such a thrill to see these characters I've grown to know and love. Vivi from ages ago, Rebecca much more recently in Dressrosa, and Shida Hoshi quite a while ago, but still pretty recent, relatively, from Fishman Island. I like each of them a lot, at the very least. It's just so great to see them interact and see how Luffy and the Straw Hats have impacted their lives, and that's the common thread among them, and that they're these great, wonderful people that, you know, are kindred spirits in terms of their soul, of who they are, of what they value in life, and the type of person they are. And it's no coincidence that Luffy has brought them together. It's no coincidence that they find each other. Luffy is just this storm that brings these people together. I say this all the time. Vivi would not be able to do this, to go to this reverie, if not for Luffy and the Straw Hats. Same for Shida Hoshi. Same for Rebecca. All three of them wouldn't be here without them. And so it's beautiful to see them here for them themselves, but also for them to share these experiences, because they do have that kinship as a result. That kinship for a bunch of reasons, but that being one of them. And then the scene with Dalton and seeing Kureha, the Drum Island stuff, it's just, we're gonna get into all of it, but it's just, everyone's here. It's like Smash Brothers. It hits every note I wanted it to hit. It's a transitional arc, foundations laying arc, hype building arc in the best place possible. And yeah, I just loved it so much. It was one of my favorite reading experiences. The VOD for it will go on Patreon eventually, if not already. And yeah, it was a phenomenal experience. As these things build, there's just more and more investment, which makes these chapters and these sorts of mini arcs so gratifying. The lore and the mythos and the history build, and it's so great. And I would be amiss if I didn't mention this right now, because as I alluded to right in the beginning, this arc changes and recontextualizes the entirety of One Piece. I don't think that's hyperbolic. I really think the introduction of Emu, I think that changes everything. Emu is immediately a phenomenal character, just through such limited screen time. Through completely, basically, in the grand scheme of things in terms of screen time, almost nothing. But the impact this character has, I don't know anything about them. I haven't seen anything except their eyes and their silhouettes. But the impact they have, and the clear influence they have on the world government, and the way this changes the fundamental conflict between Luffy and the world government, and the freedom seekers, the dream seekers in the world government, and the idea of the sun and light and the dawn, it completely changes the game. It changes everything. Emu is so fascinating, and we'll be talking a lot about them later on. But just to sum up, let me just say that Emu completely made me ascend. I already love One Piece, but Emu, and what this can mean for the series thematically, what it can mean for Luffy and the fundamental conflict of the story, and the way it just changes the complexion, the way it makes it into something archetypal, something primal, which we'll talk about, but the way it does that just spoke to me on such a foundational, fundamental level that made me think there might be a whole new level of love that I could have for the series. And I didn't really think that was possible, but this made me think that. It was amazing. And hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about without even getting into specifics, but we'll get into specifics later in the video. Also, let me just say one more thing before we start. Shanks, amazing stuff. We'll talk about him. And Kuma. Kuma might end up being one of the best characters in One Piece by the time the story's done. I can easily see that being the case. So we start with the Straw Hats, and we have a bunch of hijinks with Sanji simping for Nami, just like the old days, and it seems like we're back on track, back on schedule, and we get the news of Sanji and Luffy's new bounties. And Sanji's ends up being 330 million berries, and he's called for dead or alive now for Vinsmoke Sanji. His name on the wanted poster is Vinsmoke Sanji. And I found that quite sad. I actually found that quite sad. It's played off for laughs kind of here, because of the idea that it only went up because of Germa's infamy. But I also think it's quite sad that he doesn't really feel like he can escape that. Even having broken free of it through Whole Cake Island, there are still that sort of, even if he's broken free from it, the world still sees him as that. And I think that's quite sad. I think that's really, really sort of subtle, but very sad. So it made me feel for Sanji. But we also learn that his is finally more than Zoro's by 10 million berries, so good for him. And Luffy is sad because his bounty went down. And immediately I knew something was up about this. It's not possible for that to happen. I just really thought he was reading the number wrong. And it turns out he was. He thought 1.5 billion was 150 million? So, oh god, I love Luffy. But 1.5 billion, hefty as hell. We have not even been close to that, remotely close to that. And all of a sudden we're here. It makes Luffy one of the main players in One Piece in terms of infamy. If he already kind of was one before, he's even more prominent. One of the absolute peak notable characters in terms of One Piece throughout the entire seas. Meanwhile, we cut away, and we see that Shida Hoshi has decided to go to the Reverie because otherwise Sir Luffy will call her Wimpy Hoshi. God, I love her. So yeah, she goes with her family, she goes with the Fishman Island contingent. Everyone throughout the land is hearing about the Reverie, is hearing about Luffy and what's going on with Luffy, and how he confronted Big Mom, lived to tell the tale, ended up being quite a thorn in her side. We see Sir Crocodile reading the newspaper. We see Cavendish, or at least his silhouette. We see Dalton and Kureha. We see Bart fresh off the heels of misrepresenting Luffy, I think, or misunderstanding Luffy and burning Shanks' flag. What purpose does he have in the story from now on? I can't wait to see where he goes, because it could be really interesting. But fresh off the heels of that, seems to be waxing lyrical about Luffy. Vivi as well, the Alabasta people. We have Bej and Chiffon and Pez. In the build-up to the Reverie, everyone's reading about Luffy, and this is the birth of the 5th Emperor of the Sea. Luffy ends up becoming the 5th Emperor of the Sea, and it is monumental. I really can't believe it. It's amazing, and it's well-earned. Absolutely well-earned, but it just makes you think, is he now on the level of Shanks? I think Shanks is still above him, but are they on par? They're both emperors. Don't misunderstand me, it's not in terms of power scaling or anything, but in terms of everything, overall. Has he become a proper pirate in Shanks' eyes? I imagine he has. And it's all shaping up for an amazing, maybe antagonistic confrontation with Shanks close to the end of the series. I could easily see that happening. To become the king of the pirates, I really think Shanks' endgame or close to it. Anyways, it's just a monumental step towards that. I still think Luffy has a ways to go before he's Shanks' level overall, but I think at this point, you can easily say he's a proper pirate. He's one of the most infamous players in One Piece. One of the most infamous pirates. And it's a watershed moment. It's beautiful. We also see the Dressrosa contingent going towards the Reverie. We see a Kainu sort of operating things. We then see that there's a group of pirates who have attacked the Kingdom of Lelouchia's ship en route to the Reverie. This is what a Kainu hears. And they are stopped and attacked by someone who says, "Have no fear. I'm glad I made it in time. You're safe now." It is Captain Kobe. Navy HQ's Captain Kobe. We see Kobe for the first time in ages, and he is looking great. Like, he seems to carry this confidence. He has this carefree smile to him. He really seems to have filled in terms of his strength, not just physically, but in terms of his psychology, in terms of his attitude. I think after Marineford, he has grown into his role substantially as he saves these people, as he seems to embody the idea of the Navy as he dreamed of it as a young boy, which is so beautiful. Luffy and Kobe simultaneously parallel paths, becoming what they wanted to become. It's happening right before their eyes. It's so beautiful. These two are, I don't know, I feel like they're so intertwined, despite not seeing each other much throughout the series. We then see Helmeppo, who has a similar sort of glow-up, good for him. I've got my eye a bit more on Helmeppo after the One Piece live action made me like him a hell of a lot more than I already did. So, anyways, it's cool to see him here. Notably, they talk about Kobe's color of observation hockey. And we saw that awaken in Marineford, so he's clearly grown into that as well and been able to use it to a great degree. Though, Helmeppo says, "How is your color of observation so good, though? I never sensed a thing." Which kind of insinuates that he might have access to it as well. Just not as powerful as Kobe. I don't know, maybe it's just the wording of that, but maybe I'm looking too much into it, but it seems like that's the case, which is interesting. And what's really cool is, Kairos is here. Kairos is here on this ship that Kobe helped save. And he calls him a hero. Kairos, the embodiment of heroism. This man mountain on one leg who fought and defended Dressrosa, who was lonely for years and years and years, but came out victorious. He is the embodiment of the hero, and he calls Kobe a hero. He puts him on equal standing. And Kobe is flustered, but I don't think Kairos is wrong. And here Kobe sees a newspaper and sees Luffy there, and he's so proud of him. And this just further cements their dynamic and their parallel journeys. And then we see Kaido, who I believe is in Wano. He should still be there. Last we heard he was in Wano, but he reads of Luffy. And he gets enraged by this. As Kaido's aura grows, we see a glimpse of Blackbeard, who is just sort of laughing at the idea of Luffy being an emperor and says he's not ready for that. We'll see, but love seeing glimpses of both Kaido and Blackbeard, two premier antagonists of the series. Big Mom reacts to this as well and says, like, what is this narrative that's being pushed? He's not the winner, when did I lose? And it's essentially blamed on Morgans for pushing this narrative. And Morgans, big news Morgans. I gotta say, he's one of the most fascinating characters to me, or one of the most interesting. In One Piece throughout the entire story, the newspaper has been a huge key, a huge tool for news getting out there, for narratives being pushed, for everything, for news to get throughout the sea, and for the story that's being told, public perception, the stuff that the world government puts out there. A lot of the propaganda there has been reinforced or put out there in the first place by Morgans, it seems to be, the chief reporter in this setting. But it seems like Morgans doesn't have any real loyalty to any true faction. Earlier in the series, if you correlate some of the things that were being spouted to Morgans, you might have said that he was in the world government's pocket, but he really doesn't seem to be. He really seems to be something of a choir, of an audience insert, of a little bit of a jester, as he puts out these narratives. He just puts them out there, and he seems to enjoy seeing how things play out, seeing how the chess pieces move, seeing how the board changes when he puts out this news, and how others react to it, and how they readjust and acclimatize. I think he just loves narratives. I think he just wants to see the most interesting thing happen. I think he's just engaged. I think he's on the edge of his seat. I think he's like us. He's got popcorn, and he's just watching it. He just wants to see the greatest story of all time. So do we. So I think Morgans is actually an ingenious character. Again, so efficient, such little screen time, but his introduction, similar to Emu down the line in the Reverie, actually adds a whole new layer to a lot of the things we see throughout One Piece, putting a face to this sort of propaganda, and trying to understand his motives from which narratives are put out there. I really just think he loves the story. I think he loves the bouts. I think this place is his playing ground, and I think that his weapon, if you can even call it that, rather, his catalyst is media and news and narratives, and they will help fuel this overall grand narrative that is Luffy's journey. And I can't wait to see how Morgans continues to influence narratives down the line. He's an amazing little tool of a character. But then the last thing we see on chapter 903, we see Shanks, just his silhouette, and all he says is, "It looks like we'll be meeting soon, Luffy." That's all I need. Honestly, that's all I need every 100 chapters. These tiny moments of Shanks just dropped in that have such weight and carry such history, and his dynamic with Luffy, one of the best in the series. How it evolves, the emotional weight attached to everything he says, the way he's presented, his grin. He is just so cool. He carries such narrative weight and substance. He is such an embodiment of One Piece. His dynamic with Luffy is the best thing ever, and just all I need is Shanks to do this throughout the series, maybe culminating in some big final showdown or something. Though, I do want to clarify, not a villainous showdown, which we'll talk about later. The Shanks is this character. He is just him. He always has been, and man, he can go so high up in my character list just through these little bits, because they carry such weight and substance to them. So see, him being proud of Luffy here, him seeing Luffy become this proper pirate, I was tickled pink by it. I was so hyped. And the crew realize Luffy's true bounty as they head for Wano and as the Reverie begins. So we then see that after Blackbeard's pirates have ransacked the revolutionary hideout prior, they are now hiding out on the Kamabaka Queendom, Peachy Island, with Eva, which makes tons of sense. Eva has tons of association with Dragon. Eva is a revolutionary, and they're meeting there and discussing the world events there. What's revealed here, they talk about some interesting things here and there, but the most important thing to take away is that they intend to declare war on the Celestial Dragons, which is so thrilling. The revolutionary plot in the background through the last couple hundred chapters or whatever has been so cool. We are then introduced to 4 other revolutionary commanders, Belobedi, Morley, Lindbergh, and Karasu. I do love Karasu's design, which is really cool because we saw prior to this Sabo leaving Dressrosa and talking to a bunch of crows. This is Karasu's power, so it's cool to see it all sort of clunk into place there. But yeah, don't have much to say about this. They're all introduced. They have distinct and interesting personalities. I imagine they'll become more important down the line because they're introduced like this. But yeah, they essentially help these citizens uprise against these pirates. And Miss Belobedi gives the bounty for Peachbeard, who is the head of these pirates, to the citizens. So it's really interesting, sort of an encapsulation of the revolutionists, or the Revolutionary Army's ideals, or like what they're trying to do. They're not really in it for themselves or for the money necessarily. That seems to be a means to an end. But they really just like the citizens like this, the ones who are oppressed and overburdened, to rise up themselves, empower themselves. If they can help others feel empowered, then they've done their job. And it's quite beautiful. But yeah, we leave off on that note with the Revolutionary Army. We then see that after the Paramount War, a new stronghold has been erected. The New Marine Force Stronghold. It is stationed at the entrance of the New World, the other side of the Red Line, as Sacred Marijoa looks over it. So that is where its new standing is, and the narration says that while its location may have changed, Navy HQ continues to serve as the gateway to Marijoa, the Holy Land and home of the Celestial Dragons. And Akainu then says Fujitora showed his face? These two have always consistently butted heads, so he sends someone named Ryokugyu to extract him from Marijoa, because he doesn't have any good thoughts about what Fujitora is going to do in Marijoa at the Reverie. And Ryogokyu, he has this really interesting aura to him, cloaked in shadow. Seems very jovial, very genial, very sort of authentically charismatic. And I don't know, we saw very little, so maybe he's putting on an act, but it didn't seem like it to me. And he just had a nice conversation with Fujitora as Fujitora talked about abolishing the Seven Warlord system. He said he's crazy, but he didn't really seem to outright dismiss the idea as foolish. He just said it seems unrealistic. It's also sort of noted here that he knows Vegapunk, this guy, Ryogokyu. I think this means Green Bull. Fujitora then asked if he was in the middle of a fast, and he says, if a pretty lady asked me to open wide, I'd suppose I'd chow down. That's why I haven't had a single bite for 3 darn years. So he's been fasting. Don't know what that's all about, but really interesting establishment for this character, and I heard he was voiced by the late and great Keiji Fujiwara, rest in peace, and what a great voice to play this sort of figure. Obviously that had to be recast later, but I can't wait to see even just this scene. Elsewhere, at Marijoa, there are a bunch of parties arriving. We have Shida Hoshi and the rest of her family and the Fishman Island contingent, and they are escorted by Garp. Garp, who we haven't seen in forever. One of my favorite characters in this story who I've been deprived of, and it's so great to see him again. And what better a role for him to just be eating and escorting Shida Hoshi. And he's just being his jovial old self, and it's great to see him again. He's confronted by King Stelly, who we know is Sabo's foster brother, who is in line to become the next king of Goa. Or rather, I think he already is the king of Goa. He just doesn't really act like a king, so I was a little bit mistaken. But yeah, he does the job at being horribly obnoxious. The whole time Morgans is looking on and seeing all this big news and seeing all these narratives at play. Garp says a lot of Luffy-esque things to King Stell. He's telling him his face is stupid, to move away, to go away. And he tells Garp that he wants his connections to being good with the Celestial Dragons. Garp then asks, why would you want to be with those scumbags? And he's asked, like, you're, supposed to be advocates for them. And he goes, oh yeah, I guess that's a no-no. Okay, forget I said that. But I love the casual nature of how he does it. He has no fronts. He is not, like, to anyone who interacts with him, you know how he feels about the Celestial Dragons, and he's not afraid to hide it, but he just has to kind of stand on ceremony a little bit, just for the sake of appearances. Oh yeah, forget what I said. But his honesty is striking, regardless, and that's kind of an encapsulation of the character himself. There are lots of things that he doesn't approve of with the current world system, but it is nonetheless necessary. So he continues. Shida Hoshi and co. then take this Bondla, and we see one of the most beautiful spreads in the series, so striking in color, as Shida Hoshi finally, for the first time, sees the sun, looks at it with these bright, beautiful eyes, and just, this is what she's dreamed of. When she was captive for 10 years, this is what kept her going. She is the embodiment of this hope. She's the embodiment of this sun. And you know, I've always theorized that Luffy will bring the sun to Fishman Island permanently, and I still think that's the case, but how beautiful that she's able to see it here, the sun that her mother wanted her and all Fishman Island to see. They do see it. This is such a huge stride forward. It's beautiful, and the goal will be making this ascension something that is permanent, because they deserve it. All of Fishman Island has been striving for this, and I really hope by the end they'll get it, as they get this glimpse And I think they will get it. But there will surely be some darkness ahead before then. As Shirahoshi says, essentially what I've been saying, I want to show everyone in our kingdom this world of the sun. And then they say, then we will ask. That's the reason for this reverie. But then we see something that I found so thrilling. As the rest of the Fishman Island contingent are on this gondola, close to them is Stelly, who is kind of attacked by crows, and he's freaked out by the crows, the coward that he is, and there's a guard by him, and he goes, guard, shoot them down. And the guard goes, no worries, they won't attack you, they've never popped these bubbles before, we're safe. Please be at ease, King Stelly. As it's revealed that this guard is Sabo. Good God, how gratifying that was. Oh, you just feel, the payoff here from all of post-war is phenomenal. And we don't see what exactly Sabo does with Stelly, or maybe he doesn't do anything super prominent or super out there, but nonetheless, seeing him have this moment here, seeing that he has this upper hand, and seeing that the revolutionists have infiltrated the Reverie, and that they intend to declare war, it's so thrilling, it's so awesome, what a great moment. So the royals essentially, or everyone who's invited and who's invited to take part, all arrive at the Reverie, which leads to amazing interactions. And we're all now in Sacred Marijoa proper. And there's this really interesting, really heartbreaking moment as Fukaboshi. They're on this sort of thing called the Travelator, which is essentially a walkway that moves on its own, kind of like a Movator or something. And Fukaboshi says, you know what, let's go along the normal walkway. He suggests that to Neptune. He says, let's just do that, see the sights, let's walk ourselves. And then he thinks to himself, I just had a bad feeling, a bad intuition about that Travelator thing. And we see that underneath, there are a bunch of slaves who are pushing it. It's done completely through human labor. It's done completely through labor, through slave labor. And how fitting it is that Fukaboshi, a fisherman with his history and Fishman Island's history, was able to sense this. Very dark, but very, very good little touch there. Fukaboshi has a bunch of suitors for her hand in marriage, and as the queen she is, tells them to screw off in a very polite way, kind of the way she did to Vanderdecken. You're just not my type. It works, I guess. And then finally, we have this beautiful, beautiful scene as Vivi and Rebecca meet. And Vivi's gushing over the Tontatas, who are cutely going, we're warriors, we're escorts, and all that. And they bond over their common link, which is Luffy, like I said earlier. Won't talk about it a ton again, but it's so cool how they have this common link there, that being Luffy, and how they wouldn't be here without him, and how they owe so much to him, and they just adore him so much, him and the Straw Hats. And then Shirahoshi joins in as well. It's just so beautiful. And they're kind of going like, oh, did I really hear? Should we be talking about this? I don't know. But then it's so clear that all three of them are talking about the same people, and they go, yeah, we love Luffy. And it's so cute as Igaram, Viola, and Fukaboshi talking about their respectively Vivi, Rebecca, and Shirahoshi, and how, it's great to see Vivi and the mermaid get along. Rebecca looks like she's having fun, and Fukaboshi goes, I'm grateful because my sister's not used to social gatherings. And it's just so heartwarming and so beautiful. We then see that Sai arrives. He says after this job, he's cutting his ties with his country. We've been seeing him in the cover stories with Baby 5 and all that. So nice little touch there. But then we see Wapol. Wapol has joined in, and he is here. Oh boy. He is the king of the evil Black Drum Kingdom, along with Kinderella. And Vivi obviously takes exception to him being there, but then Dalton shows up. Dalton and Kureha. Kureha, who has this wonderful shirt that says wanted for 100 berries, in support of her son, in support of Chopper. How beautiful. But Dalton comes and he goes, it looks like you've built another nation of the misfortunate, and he kind of directly opposes him. But it's really cool. He kind of brushes Wapol off eventually, and him and Vivi catch up, and Dalton is talking with Rebecca and Shirahoshi, and then Rebecca goes, do you like Luffy? Or Lucy? And the Tontatas go, we bet you like him. And Dalton goes like, trying to stand on ceremony, trying not to sort of make himself look too childish or too fanboyish. But then he just goes, he's the best. It's so cute. It's so cute. I was overcome with cuteness at this part of the Reverie. And then immediately, right after this, we cut to Doflamingo in his cell. The bombshell. And he talks here, he's laughing here, as he tends to do. He's laughing about the idea that he's in this protective cell because those keeping him here are clearly preoccupied with the idea that an assassin will come and try to silence Doflamingo. But something that he says that's really interesting to me is he says, just let the secret out. Power has such a short shelf life. It goes bad very quickly. And there's so many layers to that. The way that he had power from birth, and it had such a short shelf life as he was ultimately tortured for it. The way that he had power in Dressrosa, and it was gone too quickly. And the way he's come to terms with that idea. It's really interesting. There are a lot of layers to that. So that is fascinating. Someone is going to silence Doflamingo because of some secrets he knows, and they're well aware of that. Really interesting. But then we cut to something even more interesting that somehow overshadows Doflamingo, which is we see this figure, who we know as Emu, this very Tim Burton-esque silhouette, kind of skinny, with this gigantic crown of spikes, it seems like, walking up these stairs, opens this vault, and it just seems to be frozen everywhere. Everything seems to be frozen. It's extremely cold. You can see their breath as they breathe out. And they open this vault, and there's a gigantic straw hat in this vault. I've heard that everyone exploded when this chapter released, and there were theories about all sorts of things. I have theories about a lot of things going forward, and I've talked about them already. I will continue to talk about them. Things to do with Luffy and what I think Wano's going to be like, and the thematic elements of Wano that I think will be at play, and Emu going forward, and Shanks going forward, and all this stuff, and Fishman Island, all this stuff I've theorized about. But once I saw this panel, I was just kind of struck with awe. I didn't really have any thoughts about what it meant, as much as just kind of being struck with awe at the mystique of this, at the ominous nature of it. This giant straw hat frozen in time. And I can't say I'm really solid on any given theory. There are a lot of things that this could be. This could be, those thoughts about how Luffy is this reincarnation of Joy Boy and how he will save Fishman Island and all of that. Maybe this is just a relic of that from the past. Maybe Joy Boy was a giant or something. I don't know. That seems a little silly, but who knows? It's not out of the realm of possibility. Maybe, but then again, maybe this is less literal. Emu has me thinking about the story from a whole different realm now, something much more abstract. Maybe the Straw Hat is a representation of something. What if it's something much more abstract? What if it isn't really literal? What if this vault is sort of a portal or a visual portal into something more? Maybe Emu realizes through what is shown to them through this vault that Luffy is a threat, a light that must be snuffed out. I find that much more likely than the former, because I don't know, what if that really is just a giant straw hat, what are the circumstances behind why Emu's going there to see it? It could easily be something that seems really redundant, whereas like Emu has this straw hat in this vault, and they're just going to see it for some reason, to be reminded of it. But that seems pretty inconsequential. That doesn't seem super noteworthy. It seems kind of, I don't know, artificial. It feels like artificial drama if Emu knows of this straw hat and just goes and visits it occasionally. There could be the case that Emu hasn't just now discovered this vault and finds this straw hat, which I think makes a bit more sense than the former. But the theory I think I'm pretty set on as right now is a working theory, but obviously, like I said earlier, I'm not by any means confident. But I think that this might be some sort of abstract portal or look into maybe the future, maybe what to be wary of. Because immediately after this, we see Emu talking to the 5 elders about the lights that must be snuffed out, and you can only imagine that the Straw Hat will be pertaining to that. Without that, I don't think there's a ton of logical cohesion between scenes. So I think I'm pretty set on the idea that this vault is some sort of projection of Emu seeing something that is pertinent to their success, and something that may be a threat to their success. And with Luffy, with the momentum he has, you would imagine that he would probably be, if there is a personification of darkness out there, he would probably be the greatest threat to it. more so than Blackbeard, who kind of dwells in darkness despite that. More so than Shanks, who doesn't have quite as much momentum and may not be as interested in going on these conquests to, plaster his light everywhere as Luffy is. Maybe this vault is telling Emu what to be most wary of in the current moment, the current light that must be snuffed out. Though I do wonder, and maybe Emu checks it from time to time to see how it changes, because that would change given the era. Who knows how old Emu is? Could be hundreds and hundreds of years old, could be responsible for the Void Century, probably might be. But that just makes me curious about what this vault showed before Luffy. Did it still show a Straw Hat? Was it Goldie Roger? But then there's 20 plus years to account for in between this, so what was it before Luffy? Directly before Luffy? I don't know, it just sparks the imagination. Anyway, those are my theories on the vault and the hat and whatever's going on with that. I don't have much confidence in any of that, but I'll just throw shit at the wall and maybe something will stick. Hopefully you were at least entertained by that. Now, we then have a conversation between Kaido and Big Mom. Kaido, who we can only assume is on Wano, who is talking with Big Mom, who says, I've got a score to settle with that kid. If you come this way, I'll kill you, Lin Lin. So they're talking about Luffy. Big Mom says, let's just get along. So I think the implication here is that Kaido is waiting for Luffy on Wano, and he doesn't want Big Mom to interfere, but Big Mom wants all the smoke with Luffy. So this had me thinking, I said this on stream, I can easily see in Wano, Luffy and Co fighting Kaido and also fighting Big Mom, both of them in Wano. I could easily see that happening. Big Mom seems very impatient to get to fighting Luffy, but Kaido doesn't want that. He wants to fight Luffy on his own, so I could see Luffy fighting Kaido and then maybe other Straw Hats or something fighting Big Mom, maybe Sanji, I don't know. But because I imagine they'd be exhausted after fighting Kaido, or maybe there'll be a decent amount of time in between. Either way, the long and short of it is, after this conversation, I do think that Wano will consist of them fighting both Big Mom and Kaido. It seemed to strongly hint at the idea that Big Mom is headed towards Wano, which is thrilling. No wonder this arc is so long. And this is more or less confirmed later, as the military say that Big Mom is on the move, and Borsalino, Kizaru, says, should I head out? Should I stop this? And Akainu says, no, remember there's an unknown military force in Wano, the samurai. And they have their hands full with the Reverie right now. The samurai are there. It's not a good idea right now. And Garp kind of just sits back to allow two of the warlords to meet. He's like, really, in the grand scheme of things, what am I going to do to stop them? And it's brought to his attention that they're squabbling over Luffy, and he just kind of laughs, a little bit proud. But then some interesting things are said. Speaking of Big Mom and Kaido, isn't the reason you're considered a naval hero? And then it seems like, I think Garp says that he cuts them off. He cuts Hina off. And he says, you mean rocks? I'd have figured you were too young to know about that, Hina. Before Roger, it was their era. But that was over 40 years ago. The past is the past. Rocks! There was some sort of period before Roger's era involving someone named Rocks that Garp was a part of. Their era, quote unquote. Interesting little hook there. Don't have many thoughts on it, but I love the idea of the era before Roger and how Garp was a part of it, and whoever Rocks may be. And Hina says that their strength is growing even without their captain. And Garp says there's no point worrying. If they return, they'll be a threat, but events will find a way to surpass our imagination anyway. And he's just grinning through all of this, seeming to almost tempt fate, this sort of unsavory fate or challenge to take them on. Meanwhile, we have Stelly, King Stelly, go to the castle in Marijoa to vow to this empty throne. There are a bunch of weapons all scattered through this throne room. And we have this empty throne, this tall seat, gazing down below on the riffraff. Which is funny because there are levels to this, right? We have the societal hierarchies, they were shown in post-war in Dressrosa. But here, the ground level are the highest powers in the land, and this empty throne is even more above that. King Stelly here, who is royalty, is vowing and bowing and pledging to this empty throne. Now, this empty throne is representative. This is so engaging, so cool thematically, so interesting for the world building and the sociopolitics of what's going on, the interpersonal politics of what's going on in Sacred Marijoa. This empty throne is representative of the fact that every nation is equal to one another. The fact that it is empty means that no one lords over another, and all nations are said to be equal. That is the line. That is the line that is fed to everyone. And an oath is made here to not seek control over the others because everyone's equal. There is no one overriding all or presiding over all. And so, everyone is as important as everyone else, and that maintains this status quo of peace. And it says the 20 weapons that guard the throne were placed there as an oath by the first 20 who created this world 800 years ago. The Nefertari family, if I remember correctly, being one of them, and defecting. Anyways, the 5 elders are the greatest power, it is said here, but no one is king of the entire world. All the nations are equal. Meanwhile, Shirahoshi, things have gotten dark, as Charlos, lovely to see him back, essentially wants to capture her. Very in character for Charlos. And Vivi and Rebecca and the Tontatas, Leo, everyone's trying to defend her. And just as these soldiers are trying to get towards Shirahoshi, to protect Shirahoshi, Lucci comes in. Lucci and CP0. Stussy, Lucci, and Kaku. And it seems like there's another figure there as well. And Lucci says the celestial dragons are the gods who created this world. All these people here are the kings of the lower realm. It's the natural order for gods to have whatever they desire. So he's protecting that order. Again, great to see Lucci here. Once again, being firmly antagonistic to all that the Straw Hats, Vivi is a Straw Hat, stand for, as he says this to Vivi. And Vivi says, that doesn't make logical sense, and Lucci says, gods are not bound by logic. Vivi insists, give back Shirahoshi, she's my friend. And King Neptune says something horrible, which is that, thank you, I will not forget your kindness, but we have risen above our station. We must realize that the surface is a falsity. It's a false horizon. Humanity is broken, and we must abandon our hopes because there is no salvation for us here. And Vivi says, King Neptune, this is not humanity. Throughout all this darkness, she has been taught, and she knows to hold hope for humanity. She knows that humankind is not representative of it. They are full of darkness, but the overriding thing that she believes in is light. This is not humanity. And what the faith she has there, again, very indicative, I think, of Luffy and the Straw Hats and what she learned with them, and this embodiment of the sun. I love what she says there. It is beautifully said, and I hope that it reaches through to Neptune. She says it, and Neptune initially sort of ignores it because he's in this blind rage. He's apologizing to Otohime for having to enact violence to save Shirahoshi, feeling horrible for her. But then, out of nowhere, this man whacks Charlos in the face, super satisfying. And what he says, we don't see him, but what he says is, I'm sorry. In the past I was a fool, but I owe the Ryugu Kingdom a great debt. And this ends up being, in one of the most beautiful little connections, Miosgard, Saint Don Quixote Miosgard. Interesting there. We didn't know that bit. But Miosgard, the person who ultimately ended up in Fishman Island, completely just dehumanized the people in Fishman Island and said to save him at all costs, and was just so horrible to them. One of the dominoes that ended up leading to Otohime's death, that's him. And he has been changed by that 10 years ago to become this person who's turned his life around, perhaps a good celestial dragon. We'll see. But I love how that one plotline comes back in this significant way. How beautiful is it that Otohime's kindness that saved this man all that time ago comes back in a very karmic way to then save her daughter. Inherited will. Otohime lives on, and her kindness, and her compassion, and her empathy, it is so strong that it echoes back in the present era in so many ways that are so tangible and life-saving. It is beautiful. But after all this, we then see a cut to this figure in a cloak looking like a Sith Lord talking to the 5 elders. They say, why would you come all this way? This is the Reverie. Given your standing, you should have nothing to do with politics. We only arranged this time on your request. And this person says, I appreciate that. And the 5 elders tell the guards to leave them. And it is revealed that this figure is Shanks. He has requested to talk with the 5 elders about a certain pirate. Now, this is immense. This is incredible, and I find it interesting because a few people in chat seem to think quite differently about this than me. There are some people who said that when they first read this, their initial knee-jerk reaction, or maybe they still believe it, I don't know what's going on with Shanks in the current time, and this sort of under-the-table talk he had with the Five Elders. Obviously, this is very sus, but I was told that some people thought Shanks was going dark side, that he was turning evil, that he was becoming a villain, or that he has been a villain all this time. And I just don't see it that way at all. Not at all. Now, of course, what he's doing here is very suspicious. What he's doing here is a secret, and it's surprising, and, you know, it's a meeting that would seem to defy logic, the logic that's been established in the setting. And he has come to talk to them about a certain pirate. One would naturally assume that to be Luffy. That's the first one that comes to mind, but it could also be Buggy. Who knows? Somehow it could be Buggy. It could be Blackbeard. It could even be Kaido, maybe alluding to something in Wano. It could be someone from the past who's deceased. Maybe it could be about Whitebeard or Roger. Maybe it's some sort of revelation in that way. But the first one you think of is Luffy. And so I understand how some people might be thinking that he's selling him out somehow. But honestly, Shanks, for 900 plus chapters up until this point, has never once given the air that he was a villain. An endgame villain, an evil mastermind, manipulating things in the shadow. Never once has Oda portrayed him that way. Now, there is a caveat. Maybe there is a bunch of breadcrumbs about Shanks being this evil mastermind along the way that I just haven't seen up until now, and maybe there's going to be something that recontextualizes things and makes me see it and see Shanks in a whole new light. That is a possibility, but I think that's a very remote possibility. I think it's very unlikely. That aside, I just don't think Shanks actually betraying Luffy and being a genuine rat is in character. I just don't think so. I don't think he's doing something that will hurt Luffy in the long run. Not at all. That isn't the person, that isn't the character that we've grown to know and love. The character we've known to grow and love is someone who made a promise with Luffy, who inspired him more than anyone else, who helped him to push himself to achieve his dreams, who gave him that straw hat, who made that promise with him to empower him to become a proper pirate, who didn't disgrace him by seeing him at his lowest moment, no matter how much he wanted to see him. This is someone who paid tribute to Whitebeard and Ace by visiting their grave and paying respects. This is the one who stopped the Marineford War, the Paramount War, who showed his appreciation to Kobe for his little act of courage that turned the tide of a war. This is someone who told Luffy that it's okay to cry, but that you need to pick yourself back up and move forward. That character becoming evil, that's not Shanks. It's not Shanks. And I'm going to say straight up, if Oda goes about this in the way that makes Shanks evil, dark side, whatever, I wouldn't be happy with that. To me, that would undercut Shanks' entire character. With that caveat aside, maybe there's been breadcrumbs all along that I just don't see at this point. With that caveat aside, but disregarding that very tiny possibility, I really don't see Shanks being dark side. I don't think he's hurting Luffy in the long term here. I just don't see it. I think that's not his character, and I think that if his character were to do that, that would be undercutting one of the best characters in the series, and I would think that's a huge flaw from Oda. And Oda's a great writer, so I just don't think he's gonna make that sort of mistake. And I just don't think it's loyal to the soul of the series. Like I said, I could easily see one of the endgame things in One Piece being Luffy fighting Shanks and defeating him to become King of the Pirates, but not in a villainous fight. It would be a rivalry, a master and apprentice sort of fight with great spirit, great shonen soul. There wouldn't be any malice. It would be a fight to test and see if he can finally clear that last hurdle and maybe become King of the Pirates. Something like that. That's the most antagonistic Shanks is going to be in this series. And what I think is happening here is either something that I literally have no way of knowing due to not having the information, and it's just a little hook from Oda, or rather, that is what I think it is. And I think what it'll result in is either, one, something that immediately helps the Straw Hats or helps him. It might not even be about the Straw Hats, it might be for him. Something that helps the Straw Hats, helps Luffy, helps him, but is in general in service of the soul of his relationship between him and Luffy, and his relationship and his ideas of what piracy mean. Something that immediately helps him in that way. Or it could be something that ends up being bad for the Straw Hats in the short term, or Luffy in the short term, if he ends up talking about Luffy, and in the long term ends up being in line with the spirit of their relationship. There might be a little bit of dicey antagonism for whatever this results in at first, but in the end, I'm sure it will in the long term end up being very beneficial. And like I said, in line with the spirit of the story, with the spirit of his relationship with Luffy, with who his character is. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Shanks talking with the elders. I know lots of people have tons of thoughts on that, and those are just mine. And then we get to chapter 908. As Charlos is taken away, Miosgard promises to protect Shirahoshi during the Reverie. Then we see something really interesting. We then see Bonnie, who is trying to infiltrate the Reverie, and sees that Kuma is being used by Roseward, essentially as a slave. Just like how on Sabaudi they would ride people, Roseward is riding Kuma. And he's bloodied, beaten up, he's got chain around him, as Roseward laments the weakness of his son. And we see that Bonnie sees Kuma being used in this way, and it's so heartbreaking. This person who was revolutionary, who used his last dying bits of agency and personal freedom to help Luffy and co., to send them off into different directions that would help strengthen them, and then to watch the Thousand Sunny as his last job, as his last duty. This is a person who has the Straw Hat's best interest in mind. He is not a bad person, and he is being used as this robot. And there's still a lot about his past that we don't really know. But he's being used as this robot, this slave. No agency, it all stripped away from him. And then we see Bonnie saying that you'll pay for this, I swear it. As Roseward says, he's the finest possible slave, one that doesn't scream. And I saw Bonnie getting emotional before, during post-war, during Marineford, and I assumed it was because of Whitebeard. But now I think, given these panels, that Bonnie has some sort of connection to Kuma. Bonnie can end up being a fantastic character. Kuma could end up being one of the best characters in the series. All the emotional foundation is there. He's been so key to the plot. The mysteries of his character are one of the most interesting tied to any character in the series. And as long as Oda wants to, I think Kuma could easily become one of the best characters in the series. All the pieces are there. And now we have some emotion here. We have some dynamic. Honestly, looking at these panels, I wouldn't be surprised if Kuma ends up being Bonnie's family. And the core of that is so essential and so key to his character, and could end up making him such an immensely fantastic character, and can make Bonnie a really good character. She's been interesting, but she could truly become a good character, or more, if this is carried out to its fullest potential. We then cut to Sabo and the revolutionaries, and Sabo is going insane. He's just going, look at what's being done to our comrade, to our kind-hearted Kuma. Again, more insight into Kuma. We would have guessed this, but he's been kind to the revolutionaries before. And he says, I can't stop raging when others tell him to stop raging. Again, showing that he's a little bit unhinged, a little bit darker, a little bit off the handle. He's not like Ace. He's not like Luffy. He's his own thing. And you can understand why he's like this due to his upbringing and his experiences. But he is just a little off the chain. He's a little unhinged. He loses control a bit more. But it's stated here, the revolutionists are here to get Kuma. Either they get him or they die trying. Nonetheless, the Reverie begins in earnest as all the leaders of the world meet, and Neptune towers over all of them. But yeah, we have so many. We have Cobra, Riku, Neptune. All these people we've come to know, as we get this beautiful spread showing all these people, and it says, my esteemed fellow monarchs, let us commence with the discussion about this beautiful world of ours. And then we cut away. That's the last we see of the Reverie. I hate Oda. But then, oh man, this is insane. We cut to the 5 elders who say, okay, the meeting's begun. They're undergoing this talk, this Reverie about the world's events. But then we get something so interesting. This is the highlight of the Reverie arc to me. As they say, 800 years ago, the Nefeltari dynasty was the sole bloodline out of the first 20 to remain in the lower realm. In other words, they're traitors. Has Cobra cottoned on to something? Let us pray it does not derail the talks. Especially with this discussion of Big Mom and Kaido. It has been 2 years since the Paramount War, and the roiling will not cease. The world's equilibrium cannot be maintained forever. The time has come for a great cleansing. Now that just sounds genocidal to me. That sounds horrific. That sounds like mass murder and death for the sake of cleansing the world of that which is not convenient to them. Aside from that, I don't know what to make of it, but it sounds diabolical. Now, we get to essentially the masterclass that made me think of One Piece in this entirely different way. As we see Imu in this place full of butterflies. This like sort of mystical forest looking thing. The Chamber of Flowers, it said. And someone goes to Emu, who's bowing. And they go, "Great Emu, they have arrived." Speaking of the 5 elders. And we see around them are these pictures of very interesting characters. 4 characters. 3 of them have their pictures slashed or punctured or torn apart or something. One of them is pristine, and it's pretty clear that Emu has done this with their sword. So, the pictures of the 3 who are punctured or slashed or whatever are Luffy, Blackbeard, and Shirahoshi. The picture of the character who is not punctured but is pristine, and who Emu seems to carry this picture. Maybe they're not carrying it, I'm not sure, I can't really tell, but nonetheless, it is not damaged, is a picture of Vivi. That is so interesting. I think Oda's very intentional in showing that Vivi's picture is not slashed up or punctured or whatever. But if we think of the 3 that are, Luffy, Shirahoshi, and Blackbeard. Luffy and Blackbeard are D's, so they go up against the gods. Emu may very well, Emu seems to be above the gods, so they would be a natural enemy of Emu. Shirahoshi is the weapon, Poseidon. So they all have great importance, and they all hold great power. Now, if you think about on a thematic level what this means, Luffy, embodiment of freedom and dreams. Blackbeard, embodiment of freedom and dreams. Just like Luffy, even though the complexion of it is totally different, he has always been an advocate of dreams. Shirahoshi as well. She's consistently believed, had hope, idealism, looked for the sun. So these 3 characters are embodiments of dreams and freedom in different ways, and as a result, may be considered lights in this setting. However, Vivi, you would assume, would be just the same as them. Vivi, a traitor of the Nefeltari dynasty. In fact, you could say that Vivi is directly in line with Luffy and Blackbeard in going up against the gods, because her family literally did it. They are the original traitors of the gods. They seem to be the first people to go up against the gods. So, Vivi is so in line with Luffy and Blackbeard, in which case, why is her picture not damaged? I don't know. Is there some reason why someone who believes and is in line with Vivi would be against these other lights? Maybe it has something to do with the Nefertari family. I'm not exactly sure, and maybe they're on some standing different than the rest of the world. I don't know. There might be some info here. I might be just lacking in info. I think I'm just gonna hang my head on that. I don't have quite enough info, but nonetheless, it just sparks so much imagination in me. I don't know exactly what to make of it, but it's so thrilling. And then we get to the next part. The great spread of the great Emu. Emu, who sits on the empty throne as the 5 elders bow down. The 5 essential, most powerful people in this setting bow down to Emu. Emu, cloaked in darkness, you can only see their eyes. And the elders say, "Have you decided upon another light to be erased from history? Simply state the name you wish stricken." So Emu, cloaked in darkness, snuffing out these lights, would seem to be an embodiment of darkness. And so, this embodiment of darkness is stated right here to be behind all of the actions of the world government, or not all of them, but like the progenitor from which a lot of their actions spring out. And from this, we can see that not only has Luffy been striving for his ultimate freedom and adventure and dream and love, not only was he being antithesis by corruption, but he's being literally antithesis by darkness. A darkness who does all it can to snuff out any light that seems to be in its way. They have done it before. Perhaps Roger was one. And they will do it again, as the elders say, which is the name you want stricken out. Emu is clearly interested in the weapons. Emu is clearly interested in those with the D. But more than anything, they're interested in what that all adds up to, and when it adds up to being a light, and snuffing that light out for the sake of their own narrative, whatever that narrative may be. Luffy is the ultimate light, not because he's morally pristine, but because he has been the sun consistently from the beginning, but specifically since the imagery started in Skypiea. He's been the dawn. He's been the sun. He's been the light, the day, the end of a storm. the beginning of the reign in Alabasta, but you know what I mean. He has been light. Absolutely. And so Emu is his antithesis. And this turns Luffy versus corruption into something much more primal, archetypal. This is turned from Luffy versus corruption to something much broader, which is light versus dark. Something that has been a part of stories since stories existed. Something fundamental to humanity. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that light versus dark wasn't a theme before, but it's been much more subtextual, or much more, the darkness had been showed through specifics. But here we get literally darkness versus light. And to me, that elevates One Piece even more. It makes it feel even more meaningful of a story, as if I thought it could. I didn't even think it could get more meaningful, but it does. And it just adds this mystique to One Piece, this grandness to it. It makes One Piece feel fundamentally tied to stories in general. It feels like this is a commentary on stories a little bit. Light versus dark. The darkness needing to snuff out the light. And there seems to be an element of self-preservation here. Emu, looking at these butterflies in this chamber of flowers, looking at that hat. The more and more I talk, the more I do think that that vault was sort of a portal into seeing what the greatest threat towards them was, as they then talk to these elders who ask, what is the light you want to snuff out? The Straw Hat. But then it makes you think about the backstory here. Who is Emu? Why do they want to strike out this light? Did they once think like those in the light do? And did they come to learn that it was futile? Did they come to dwell in darkness because they couldn't in light? Are they scared? I don't know. I don't know any of these questions, but these bring ideas to my mind, and I think a lot of it is tied to... It could be tied to why Vivi wasn't struck out. Why Vivi wasn't struck out, why those others were. I think there's tons of theorizing food here, but not a ton of clear-cut answers, and I love it. But I think I'm on the right track. I really do think that this is telling us so many things fundamental to stories, light and dark, and the backstory of Emu may be completely tied to a lot of these things. But then again, you wonder, how did Emu gain this influence? I don't know. I think it's all there in that backstory, whatever it's going to be. And one more thing is that I love the symbolism here, because the empty throne was earlier told to us as a symbol of the fact that there is peace, that there is no one person that stands above anyone else in the seas. And so no one will lord over one another or try to fight one another, because you're all in this together. And there is no one god or king that towers above the other gods or kings. But now we know that's not true. There is a god in the shadows, and it is Emu. Emu completely breaks the foundation of that veneer of peace, of equality. There is a hierarchy here. A lot of people just don't know about it. And so you can trace so much of the corruption here back to the motives of Emu and snuffing out these lights throughout history, the embodiment of darkness. And notably, Emu is sea backwards. The sea, the vast expanse of freedom, the ocean, what it represents. Emu is the opposite of it. Emu is sea backwards. So you take freedom, this great expanse, this light, this conquest, and you get the opposite of it, and that is darkness, restriction, oppression, dark and light, day and night, the sun and darkness. As Pedro talked about during his death, the sun will rise again and the night is darkest before the dawn. I think the more and more time goes by, the more I think of Pedro and what he said, and I think it ties in with Emu. I think it ties in with Luffy and Emu and everything. But now we have a personification of the world government, of one single person that represents them, an actual enemy that can be defeated, whereas before it seemed to be a group, a body, or an ideal, or an ideology. And then it was pointed out to me that Doflamingo, when he was crowned the Dark King, all that time ago in his backstory in Dressrosa, those who bowed before him struck a very similar storyboard or composition of the panel of the spread as is shown here. Even from the little minute details like the angle of certain weapons. You look at that panel of Doflamingo, maybe I'll put it in here really quickly. You look at that panel of Doflamingo, and you look at this spread of Emu. There's a distinct parallel here. Two dark kings, perhaps. And then you think about how Doflamingo tried to snuff out Moria, or was given orders to snuff out Moria. Orders from higher on up. Could those have been Emu? Could Doflamingo be the chosen successor of Emu, or like Emu's apprentice or something? There are some visual parallels that are clear. I don't know. Emu is amazing. Emu is already a fantastic character that recontextualizes the entire series, that has dynamics with Luffy and Doflamingo, and just the Straw Hats in general, and the world at large, and the world government that are fantastic. Emu is amazing. But with the Emu stuff done, let's just do a little teaser into Wano. Into the Wano video, into the Wano arc, because I did read one more chapter in this stream to get me just a little taste of Wano. We see that Neko has found Marco in this quest to find Marco and gather him as an ally after the Whitebeard pirates have scattered after tackling the Blackbeard pirates. Neko has found him, and Marco looks to be doing well. He's looking good. He's a doctor. And the fact that Marco is a doctor, after his immense fear having to do with the Marineford, the Paramount War, was not anything to do with combat, but the fact that Whitebeard's health would fail. It makes total sense that Marco is a doctor because of this. It's perfect. And he's healing kids, and it's beautiful. And he is now in this village in the New World that was Whitebeard's. We learned this beautiful new tidbit about Whitebeard, that he was an orphan. This village was Whitebeard's. He was an orphan that resided on this island that had been sort of shunned and dismissed because of the pirates and all that had gone on. It couldn't pay the heavenly tribute, so this island was forgotten. But Whitebeard went out on the sea, used his dirty money to pump into this island to allow them to flourish, because it's his home, and it will always be his home. And Marco briefly talks about how they tried to teach at Blackbeard, and were defeated. And then he mentions that Shanks put that grave here, not too far from where they were sitting. And then Marco kind of breaks down into tears, saying, Pops was always kind of a cheapskate, you know? He never paid the whole tab at a restaurant, he wanted others to pay for his drinks, but we were okay for it because we knew he was putting his shares into this place. And then they mention Weevil a little bit. Interesting. And so Marco doesn't come with them or anything, but he asks Neko to pass along a message to Luffy. And Neko says okay. And then we get this beautiful establishing spread of Wano. I can almost hear the shamisen as the curtains unveil and we see someone playing. And then we see this grand, beautiful spread of the land of Wano. This beautiful, insanely beautiful architecture. Just colors everywhere. Flowers, petals in the air, trees, flowers, just beautiful. I can't even describe it. Wano is breathtaking. And we see that the Straw Hats throughout have taken up roles to try to conceal their identity as they've infiltrated Wano. Frankie is posing as a carpenter. Well, he is a carpenter, but fake name. Usopp is a toad oil salesman, so he's being a little unsavory. There's a little bit of a Naruto reference throughout this, I think. Robin is a geisha, and she looks beautiful. And then, notably, we don't see Zoro as we cut to a flashback of Kinemon telling them, listen, you guys need to blend in. If you are found out, we are in deep trouble. Okay, got it? And Robin and Frankie and Usopp seem to have gotten the message, and there's just this panel of Zoro looking the stupidest he's ever looked. You know from the minute you see this that Zoro's disguise is not going well. He is not being passed off as a local. In fact, he is accused of being this person who is at large for killing people. He is said to be Sujigiro, who is the person at large. He is mistaken for him. He is sentenced to commit seppuku, and he's also apprehended for having the blade Shusui, the legendary blade of Wano, because that is a relic. And Zoro is taunted by this guy who seems to be sentencing him. And as it seems like he's about to commit seppuku, he goes, you know what, I think you're the killer. I smell blood and it says you're the killer. So instead of committing it, he instead slices the damn building in half with the seppuku blade in one of the coolest, maybe the coolest Zoro moment, a Zoro spread since post-time skip probably, or maybe there were some Pika spreads that were great, but in one of them at least. And it's just as raw, and as raw as it is, it's actually funnier. Because at the end of it he goes, I'm sorry Kinemon, I'm not blending in too well. Oh, it's perfect. But that is the end of this video's jurisdiction. We did one chapter of Wano just to get a little bit of a taste, but yeah, man. This was phenomenal. Reverie is phenomenal. It does all that you want to do for a transitionary arc in One Piece. It juggles so many things and does it so well. A great amount of hype world building, emotions, catching up, mechanical transitioning, theorizing, recontextualization. It does everything, and it does it so well, so pristinely, so efficiently, it's so tight. Reverie is amazing. And going forward, I do have a couple of predictions or desires for Wano. One of them is I hope Zoro is actually more present than he has been since post-time skip. I do want some more prominence from Zoro. I do think that he hasn't been tackled as much as I would have liked. It's been more than 300 chapters since post-time skip, and I think that I want him a bit more in the spotlight. That would be cool. But that's one of the lesser things. I also do think my Kanjuro prediction, if it is going to become true, if Kanjuro is more than he seems, I think it will happen in Wano. I think it just has to. It's the apex, it's the culmination of Kanjuro's role in the story, and if it's going to happen anywhere, I think it will happen here. I'm still coping. I still think Kanjuro is more than he seems. Another prediction I had on stream was that I have a great feeling about Kaido. I think he'll end up being a great character, with tons of really cool substance, and I really hope so, and I hope he's a great antagonist for Luffy, and I just get the feeling he's going to be like a top 10-ish character. I think he can do that. I think he can. I won't be disappointed if he's not, if that's just not his role, but that's just the prediction I have right now. And lastly, my biggest prediction, I think, for Wano is that, a lot of things have been building. We got the Emu stuff, the darkness versus light, night versus sun, right? Night versus day. We've had some more Fishman Island things to do with the sun. We've had Pedro talking about the dawn and the darkness, and how that sort of coalesces with the Mink tribe's ideals and how they are attached to the samurai of Wano, and Odin and Roger, Luffy Momonosuke. By the way, another prediction I have is that Luffy and Momonosuke will eventually become one of the best dynamics in the whole series, and I think that could happen in Wano. I really do. As Momonosuke has this sort of coming of age, and Luffy and Momonosuke are this generation's sort of Odin and Roger. We'll see. But I really do think with all the aforementioned stuff, with Pedro talking about the dawn, and how it's coming, and how Wano was this land of the sun, and Odin and Roger were maybe indicative of that sun, especially Roger, but then it's been snuffed out by the night that is Kaido. I think the sun has to come again to defeat Kaido, and I think that sun is Luffy. And so basically what I'm getting at is I think that all of the sun imagery that's been building up until this point will come to fruition in one way or another, in a big moment or sequence or something in Wano. I really feel that way. I don't know the specifics, but I think it'll have to do with that. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Reverie is a fantastic arc. It's a 9 out of 10. It's legit one of my favorite One Piece arcs. It's hard to rank it in comparison to others, but it's definitely one of my favorites. It's fantastic. In terms of my character list, yeah, we got our top 30. I promise I won't go higher than a top 30. I promise. But for the honorable mentions, kind of similar to last video, but with some key changes. Honorable mentions, we have Big Mom, Smoker, Sengoku, Shirahoshi, Aokiji, Cricket, Kalgara, Hiraluk, Sir Crocodile, Frankie, Pedro, Zeph, Brule, oh, the Going Merry, of course. Sorry, I might have left that out of the prior lists. But then added to this from the Reverie, after I kind of reflected on his big spread in Whole Cake Island and his role in the Reverie and his role in general, is Morgans. Morgans is in my honorable mentions. I think he's great. I really like him. I think he's essential to what One Piece as a story does. And he's essential to the setting. It's great. Now, the character ranking. Number 30? Again, call me crazy. Number 30 is Emu. With all that Emu does, with such little screen time, I don't think Emu even utters a word, but for what they do for the story, automatically into my top 30, automatically had to be a favorite character. Yeah, I've already gushed about Emu all this video, and you know why I like them so much. It does so much for the story. I ascended when reading this stuff. So, Emu number 30. Chopper number 29. Kuma number 28. Again, the appreciation for Kuma is really just boiling, and simmering, and I really think he could end up being so high. But as for right now, 28. Number 27, Roger. Number 26, Sabo. Number 25, Fisher Tiger. Number 24, Blackbeard. Number 23, Carrot. Number 22, Wiper. Number 21, Kairos. Number 20, Brook. Number 19, Fujitora. Number 18, Noland. number 17 Buggy, number 16 Jimbei, number 15 Corazon, number 14 Ace, number 13 Garp, number 12 down a tiny bit more after Vivi showing herself and having some great moments in Reverie. Law is number 12, Vivi is number 11, Zoro's number 10, Sanji is number 9, Nami is number 8, Robin is number 7, and then he just does things to me. Shanks is number 6, Katakuri is number 5, Usopp number 4, Whitebeard number 3, though elevated by some stuff, I'm not gonna lie, in this arc. Oh, sorry, I guess it wasn't in this arc, I guess it was the beginning of Wano, but that mark was tough. Amazing for Whitebeard. Number 2, Doflamingo, and number 1, Luffy. That is my character ranking for now. Wano's gonna change it for sure, whether it be through new characters, olds. I really hope to see Momonosuke on this list in the future. Marco could easily be an honorable mention too. We'll see. The Reverie's going on in the background, and it kills me that I can't see it, but I think it works for the structure of the story. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening and for watching. This video is longer than I thought it would be, considering the arc is 5-6 chapters, but hey, there's so much to talk about here. I hope you get why I had to take so long to talk about it and theorize about it, because it really deserves it. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to see the next video, which is Wano Part 1, we're here. You can do so by subscribing to my Patreon for the $5 pledge. You can also experience past VODs that are currently unavailable on Twitch, so if you want to experience my read-through of Marineford, or some Whole Cake Island stuff, or Dressrosa, post-war, whatever, there's some VODs there, and you can check them out. Now, Patreon is a bit weird. They have some sort of weird UI stuff, where if you're a $5 patron, you can't see the locked out $10 stuff. It's really weird. I don't know why, but I would recommend going on a new browser if you want to see the locked out VODs and stuff for the higher tiers. Go on a new browser where you're locked out of Patreon, and you can see everything. But for some reason, if you're a $5 patron and you're logged in, and you want to see, oh, maybe I want to see a VOD from the past and see maybe if I want to upgrade my tier to see a prior VOD, for some reason Patreon doesn't let you see those blocked ones, the title of blocked ones, if you're like a lower tier. So it's bizarre. So if you want to see them, I'd recommend opening a new browser, checking out my Patreon page from there, seeing if there are VODs you want to check out, and then doing it like that. Sorry about that. I don't know what the deal is. It's very bizarre. Anyways, yeah, early access to the next review, which will be Wano Part 1 for $5. The Twitch VODs are on there for $10. If you want to follow me on Twitch, where we will be continuing our journey as we get very, very close to the current part of the story. I can't believe I'm saying that. You can follow me on Twitch, where we read every chapter live. You can also follow me on Twitter /X. You can join the Discord server. Great community. And yeah, if you want one of the comments of this episode or this video, if you want to comment on this video and you want it to be in a future episode, a future review, just use the hashtag AJPiece, and it could potentially be used in a future video. Thank you guys so much for watching. The Reverie is amazing. I can't wait to dig deep into Wano, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for your continued support.